Alright guys, this is going to be an exciting video because not only am I going to give you a great recipe for weight loss, I'm also going to give you a strategy for long-term weight management and great health benefits. So this main strategy consists of cooking a huge 8-quart pot of soup every week. And you're going to put half of it in the freezer and half of it in the fridge. So you can have fresh soup all week long. Or if you choose to have other meals, throughout your week and alternate things, that's fine too. It's good to always have a plan B ready for you in your fridge or your freezer. So not only are you gonna learn how to batch cook this soup, but you're also gonna learn how to properly alternate the ingredients throughout the months and weeks that you're going to be utilizing this tactic. And there's so much experimentation and variation that can go into these recipes. You really can make them your own each and every time, regardless of whose recipe you're utilizing. So here are all the yummy ingredients I'm going to throw in my particular version of this soup today, but I will be going over the variations that you can choose in case you have different taste preferences or you just want to get creative. Let's start with the ginger and the turmeric root. So you're just going to need a little bit of this because it's very potent. And then any kind of frozen veggies. Right now I have these Fiesta style veggies as well as the sweet corn and the green peas. You can add whatever veggies you have in your freezer. It really doesn't matter. It'll all taste good. And then for some greens, I have chopped collards and mustard greens. Again, you can use whatever ones you have available. The beans and lentils I used were garbanzo, these green lentils, black-eyed peas, and some red beans. You can switch those up, use cannellini, you can use kidney, black beans, red lentils, anything you choose. It doesn't necessarily have to be these ingredients. That's the beauty of this soup. So then I have a red onion. Again, you can choose any type of onion or scallion. And then the butternut squash. You can try any other variation of squash you wish. They all taste delicious in this soup. But I particularly use crushed tomatoes because I like the texture, and make sure you get no salt added because those tend to be really high in sodium. But the crushed varieties also are less processed, so they're going to have more of that fiber intact if you're going to go with canned at all. I just find it's more convenient. And then we have some apple cider vinegar for those who have trouble digesting legumes. So this actually helps to break down those resistant starches and create more of a favorable environment for your bacteria if you're not used to eating beans. But if you eat legumes regularly, feel free to leave out the apple cider vinegar. Beans that I soaked overnight. As you can see, they've definitely grown in size, but there's still plenty of water in between the beans and the top of the pot. So there's plenty of water left over for the rest of the ingredients I'm going to include in this recipe, and then at the end I'll just top it off with water completely if it needs more. So I always appreciate it when I'm learning a new recipe when the cook shows me exactly what tools they're about to utilize to carry out the recipe. So I'm just going to show you guys exactly what I'm using today. So you're going to need a cutting board and a sharp knife and a knife sharpener. You always want to sharpen your knives before you start chopping up your veggies. And this is particularly helpful. It's a Global Yukon. I've used this for years and it's been a lot safer than some other knives I've utilized in the past. I can link all these down below if you're interested. And then you're going to need several large glass, I use Pyrex, but you can use whatever you have on hand, these larger storage bowls. The glass is great because you can freeze them and you can store them in the fridge and you won't have to worry about getting any of those PCB contaminants or any of those other chemicals and plastics. So then we have a pressure cooker. I'm not particular about the type, as long as it's an 8-quart. You're gonna need the space. And then we have the Vitamix for the blending. All right, let's get started. Now before you turn on your soup, you actually want to take some of the broth and pour it into our blender. You want to make sure you don't get any of those chunks of squash that are trying to escape. Maybe just a little more. You just want to get enough to create a base for the veggies you're about to blend up. Now that I've mixed all the seasonings together nicely, I'm going to put it in the pressure cooker. Make sure the valve is shut. And I'm just going to put it on the soup mode, but I'm going to reduce the time slightly because I don't want to overcook it. Let's go with 32 because I'm going to be cooking it a second time with the greens and the veggies. All right, now we're gonna put everything in this blender and stir it up. All right, so we're gonna start the blender on low. Make sure the dial is all the way down to the 1, and then turn it on, and slowly increase the dial. But you don't need this too blended for our purposes because it is a soup base, so it can be a little chunky or a little thick. Okay, so I'm gonna manually let the steam out of this thing. I'm gonna add a little bit of the apple cider vinegar, the blended mix, and then you're gonna wanna add whatever veggies that you have in mind. I'm gonna put some corn, green peas, mustard greens, and collard greens. Now we're just gonna let this sit for a little while. It doesn't really need to cook. The veggies will be nice and cooked through just by sitting in the hot soup. So after it's all mixed up, I'm just gonna put the top back on and let it sit. So I'm going to be going over some real quick alterations you can make to this recipe to kind of make it your own. Instead of squash, you can use things like pumpkin puree or regular pumpkin or sweet potatoes, other sorts of potatoes. And then if you're not so interested in the weight loss aspect of this recipe, you're free to try different grains. You can even use pastas, rice, quinoa, whatever your pleasure. For the vegetables, like I mentioned, this is just what was in my freezer, so you're free to use whatever you have available, or fresh fruits, or fresh vegetables, those work too. I just find that these frozen varieties are so easy to just toss in this soup because, as you can see, there's a lot that goes into this particular recipe. But I do find that sweet corn goes really well in these tomato-based curries. And then the beans, these are just what I had on hand. I love putting some kind of red bean, and the garbanzo beans work really well in this recipe. But if you don't want to use the green lentils, red lentils go really well as split peas, the yellow ones particularly. Some other things you can alternate are the greens. I just happen to have collard greens and mustard greens at the moment, but you can use spinach, bok choy, kale, whatever you have available. And it doesn't necessarily have to be frozen. I just love how it's all chopped and ready to go. I just toss it right into the soup at the end. I completely understand how difficult it is to incorporate more healthy foods into your diet. It takes time, but it does take consistency. As long as you're slowly improving the amount of plant to not plant food that you have in your diet, that's what we're looking for. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you want more recipes or weight loss inspiration and motivation, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I come out with videos at least every Monday and Thursday. So I'll see you guys next time.